I want you to picture a row of brass mailboxes in a lobby I had never stood in before. Cold marble floors. A doorman who looked at me like he already knew my face. Which was strange, because I had never met him in my life. And on the little slot marked Unit 1204. There was a printed label with 3 names on it. My husband's name, Daniel Cole. Then my name, Rebecca Cole. And then a third name I did not recognize. Vanessa Marlowe. I stood there in my scrubs, still smelling like the hand sanitizer from the children's hospital where I had worked a double shift. And I read those 3 names over and over like they might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My name was on a mailbox in downtown Chicago. In a building I had never entered, for an apartment I did not know existed. Next to a woman I had never heard of. And the thing that made my knees go soft was not the woman. It was my own name. Because I had never signed a single paper for that place. So how in the world was I living there without knowing it? That was the morning everything I thought I understood about my marriage came apart. But to understand why I was standing in that lobby at all, you have to understand who I was before that day. So let me take you back. My name is Rebecca. Most people call me Becca. I am 41 years old. And I have spent 19 of those years as a pediatric nurse. I hold small hands during needle sticks. I sit with mothers at 2 in the morning when the fever will not break. I am good at staying calm when everyone around me is falling apart. And I used to be proud of that. I did not know yet that being the calm one my whole life had taught me to explain away things that should have terrified me. I live in Naperville, Illinois, in a quiet neighborhood with maple trees that turn the color of fire every October. I married Daniel when I was 27. He was a commercial real estate consultant, which is a fancy way of saying he helped companies find office space and negotiate leases in the city. He wore good shoes and remembered the names of everyone's kids and could make a room laugh in under a minute. When he looked at you, he made you feel like you were the only person he had ever wanted to talk to. I know now that this is a skill. Back then I thought it was love. We had 2 children. Ethan, who is 12 and already taller than me. And Lily, who is 9 and still climbs into my lap when she is scared. Building a life with Daniel felt like building a house on ground I trusted. I did not check the foundation. Why would I? You do not test the floor of your own home before you walk across it. I want to be honest about the sacrifices. Because they matter to this story. When Ethan was born, I stepped back to part-time hours for 6 years. My career slowed while Daniel's took off. I told myself that was partnership. When his firm went through a rough patch, I cashed in a chunk of my own savings. Money my grandmother had left me, to help us cover the mortgage for 8 months. I never asked for it back. I signed our tax returns without reading past the first page because Daniel handled the money and I trusted him completely. I let him be the one who understood our finances. That decision, that one quiet decision to hand over the whole map of our money, is the thread that this entire story pulls on. For years, life was ordinary in the way that good lives are ordinary. Soccer games in the rain. Pizza on Fridays. Daniel coaching Lily's team even though he did not know the rules. We were not perfect, but we were solid. Or I believed we were. The second apartment came into our lives about 3 years ago. And it arrived so gently that I never saw it as a threat. Daniel came home one evening, loosened his tie, and told me his firm was expanding into a downtown build-out that would require late nights and early client breakfasts. He said the commute from Naperville was killing him. 90 minutes each way on a bad day. He said the company was leasing a corporate apartment in River North so the senior consultants could stay over when the work ran late. He would keep some clothes there, a razor, a spare suit, It was a work perk, he said. Nothing more. It made sense. That is the terrible part. It made perfect, reasonable sense. Real estate people do keep places in the city. Late nights are real. I even remember feeling grateful. Because when he stayed downtown, he was not driving home exhausted at midnight on the interstate. I remember telling my sister that Daniel had a company apartment now. And saying it with a little pride, like it meant he had made it. For a long time, there was nothing to see. He stayed in the city 1 or 2 nights a week. He always answered his phone. He came home on weekends and was present and warm and helped with homework. If you had asked me then whether I trusted my husband, I would have laughed at the question. The first small thing I noticed, I did not even notice at the time. I only understood it later, the way you understand a strange sound in the night only after you learn what made it. It was a receipt. I was moving Daniel's jacket to the dry cleaning pile. And a receipt fell out. A furniture store on Wells Street. $1,900 for a sofa and an ottoman. And I remember thinking, why is Daniel buying a sofa for a corporate apartment that the company furnished? I actually asked him about it that night. Casually, while I was rinsing dishes. He did not even blink. He said the company gave the consultants a small budget to make the place livable. And the old sofa had a stain. He said it so smoothly. So instantly, that I felt silly for asking. I dropped it. That is how it starts. Not with lipstick on a collar. With a sofa. And an explanation so smooth you feel foolish for having questioned it. The next thing was the phone. Daniel had always used his phone in front of me. Left it face up on the counter, handed it to me to check the weather or show me a video. Then, sometime in that second year of the downtown apartment, the phone started living face down. He started taking it into the bathroom. Once, when a text came in while he was in the shower, I glanced at the screen out of pure habit. And the name was just a single letter. V, no number, no full name. Just V. I told myself it was a client. Vendors. Everyone in his world went by initials and shorthand. Then came the money, which is the part that still makes my stomach turn. I had always let Daniel handle our finances. But one afternoon I logged into our joint account to move some money for Lily's dance recital costume. And I saw a payment I did not recognize. $1,100, going out every month to something listed only as Hartwell MGMT. I had never heard that name. I asked Daniel about it that evening. And this time there was the smallest pause before he answered. A half second. But I caught it, the way you catch a stumble in someone's step. He said the firm had restructured how they billed for the apartment. And now the cost passed through our account and the company reimbursed him quarterly. He said it was an accounting headache and he was sorry it looked strange. $1,100 a month, leaving our account. Reimbursed quarterly, he said. I never once saw a reimbursement come in. But I did not check, because checking would have meant admitting that I was the kind of wife who checks. And I did not want to be that woman. Pride is a strange thing. It will keep you from looking at the very thing that is about to ruin you. The warning signs stacked up slowly, one paper on top of another. Until they were a pile I could no longer pretend not to see. He started staying in the city 3 nights a week. Then 4. His weekends got shorter. He missed Ethan's science fair. The first thing he had ever missed. When I brought it up gently, he snapped at me, and Daniel almost never snapped. He said I had no idea how much pressure he was under. He said the firm was drowning him. And then, that same night, he apologized with a bouquet of white lilies. My favorite, and I let it go. Again. The turning point, the moment the ground actually shifted, came on a Tuesday in March. Daniel had left his laptop open on the kitchen table while he ran out to move his car for street cleaning. I was not snooping. I want that to be clear. Because for months afterward I would replay it and wonder if I had made all of this happen by looking. But I was simply reaching across the table for my coffee. And the screen was awake, and there was an email open. It was a receipt from a home goods store. A confirmation for a delivery. And the delivery address was the downtown apartment. Unit 1204 at a building called the Hartwell on North Wells Street. That name again. Hartwell. The same name that had been leaving our account every month. But that is not what stopped my heart. What stopped my heart was the name on the delivery. The order was placed under the name Vanessa Marlowe. And the billing method attached to that order was a credit card ending in the same 4 digits as a card I recognized. A card in my name. A card I did not remember opening. I sat very still for a long time. I heard Daniel's key in the door. I closed the laptop the exact number of degrees it had been open. Took my coffee, and said good morning like nothing had happened. Because the calm one always stays calm. But something inside me had already started walking toward that building. Weeks before my body actually went. For the next 11 days, I did the quiet work of a woman who has decided to stop being lied to. I did not scream. I did not accuse. I gathered. I pulled my own credit report for the first time in years. My hands were shaking as the page loaded. And there it was. A credit card I had never applied for. Opened 2 years earlier, with a balance of $9,000. A home equity line of credit taken out against our house. Our home, with a signature at the bottom of a document I had never seen. My signature. Except it was not my signature. It was a version of it, close but wrong. The kind of forgery that only the person who wrote the real one would catch. The R in Rebecca leaned the wrong way. I make my R with a straight back. This one curved. I understood, in that moment. Something colder than an affair. My husband had not just been unfaithful. He had used me. He had used my good credit. My clean name, my 19 years of paying every bill on time. To build a second life. My name was the collateral. I was the foundation of a house I did not know I was holding up. And still, I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to stand in that lobby. So on a Thursday, after a double shift, still in my scrubs, I drove into the city instead of home. I told myself I was only going to look. I parked in a garage 2 blocks away and walked to North Wells Street. And there it was. The Hartwell. A glass and brick building with a green awning and a doorman. I walked into the lobby like I belonged there. Because I have learned that if you walk into any room like you belong, most people will let you. And that is when I saw the mailboxes. And Unit 1204. And the 3 names. Daniel Cole. Rebecca Cole. Vanessa Marlowe. I was still standing there. Staring, when the elevator opened behind me. A woman stepped out. She was maybe 35, with dark hair pulled back and a canvas bag over her shoulder full of fabric samples. She was pretty in a tired way, the way people look when they are carrying more than they show. She glanced at me, then at the mailbox I was standing in front of. And something in her face changed. She slowed down. "Can I help you find someone?" she said. Not unkind. Careful. And I do not know what made me say it. Except that I was done being careful. I said, "I am looking for Daniel Cole." The color left her face. All of it. She set her bag down on the marble floor very slowly, like it had become too heavy to hold. And she said, "How do you know Daniel?" And I said, "I am his wife." For a moment neither of us moved. The doorman pretended to be very interested in his computer. And then this woman, Vanessa, said the sentence that told me she was not the villain of my story. She said, "That is not possible. Daniel is divorced. He has been divorced for 4 years." We did not scream at each other. I want you to know that, because I think people expect 2 women in a lobby to become enemies. We did the opposite. We stood there, 2 women who had been lied to by the same man. And we recognized each other. She invited me upstairs. And against every instinct, I went. The apartment was beautiful. Vanessa was an interior designer, and it showed. And it was clearly, painfully, a home. Not a corporate crash pad. Photos on the walls. 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. A closet with Daniel's suits, the good ones. The ones I thought were at the dry cleaner. And on the refrigerator, held by a magnet, a sonogram. Vanessa was 4 months pregnant. I had to sit down. She got me a glass of water, and this woman who had every reason to see me as a threat instead sat across from me and told me the truth. The whole truth, as she understood it. She had met Daniel 3 years earlier at a design conference. He told her he was divorced, that his marriage had ended amicably. That he shared custody of 2 kids who lived with their mother in the suburbs. He told her the ex-wife, me, was still on some shared paperwork because untangling the finances took time. That was why my name was on the mailbox. On the lease, on the accounts. He had told her I insisted on staying attached financially and that it was a headache he was slowly resolving. Every lie he told her was the exact reverse of the lie he told me. To me, the apartment was a work perk. To her, it was their home. To me, she did not exist. To her, I was the reluctant ex. He had built 2 entire realities and stood in the middle of them. And my name, my forged name, was the bridge that held both up. The $9,000 card. The home equity line against my house. Vanessa did not know about any of that. But I understood it now. Daniel's firm had not restructured anything. There was no corporate apartment. There never had been. He was paying for a second household, and when his own credit could not stretch far enough to furnish a double life, he reached into mine. He forged my name to pull equity out of the home where our children slept. To buy a sofa for the woman he told everyone was his fiancée. That word, fiancé, is the one that finally broke me. Vanessa said it. She showed me the ring on her hand. He had proposed to her in the fall. On a rooftop, with our children's college fund. Though of course she did not know that part. She thought she was marrying a divorced man who loved her. She was carrying his child. And she had no idea that the whole time. 3 train stops away, I was packing his lunch and telling our kids that Daddy worked hard for us in the city. I drove home that night and I did not cry. Which frightened me more than crying would have. I put my children to bed. I checked Lily's fever, which had finally broken. And then I sat at the kitchen table in the dark and I made a decision. I decided that I would not confront Daniel with rage. Rage was what he would expect, and rage was easy for him to manage. He had spent our whole marriage managing my feelings with lilies and smooth explanations. I decided instead to do something he could not talk his way out of. I decided to protect my children, protect myself. And hand the truth to people whose job it was to deal with it. The next morning, before Daniel woke, I photographed everything. The credit report. The forged home equity document. The bank statements showing the payments to Hartwell Management. I forwarded my own copies of the account records to an email address only I could access. Then I called two people. A divorce attorney named Karen. And my own bank's fraud department. I want to be careful here. Because I know some of you are hoping I did something dramatic and vengeful. I did not slash tires. I did not burn suits in the yard. I did something far more powerful and far quieter. I told the truth to the systems built to handle it. And I let the weight of what he had actually done fall on him. Karen, my attorney, listened to the whole story with her hands folded. And when I finished, she said something I will never forget. She said, "Rebecca, an affair is a private betrayal. But forging your signature on a home equity loan is a felony. You are not just a wronged wife. You are a crime victim. And that changes everything about your leverage." That word, leverage, was the first thing in weeks that made me feel like I could breathe. Here is how it unfolded, step by step. Because I know that is the part that matters. First, I froze my credit and filed a formal identity theft report with the Federal Trade Commission. That created an official record, dated, that said I did not authorize those accounts. This was critical, because it meant that when Daniel inevitably claimed I had known all along, the timeline was already on my side. Second, I filed a police report for forgery and identity fraud. I did not do this out of revenge. I did it because the home equity line put a lien on the house where my children lived. And if I did nothing, I would be legally on the hook for a debt I never agreed to. Reporting it was the only way to protect Ethan and Lily's roof. Third, Karen filed for divorce, and because we live in Illinois, an equitable distribution state, the financial fraud became central. When one spouse dissipates or steals marital assets, the court can weigh that heavily in the final split. Daniel had drained our children's college fund and mortgaged our home to fund another household. That is not a gray area. That is the kind of thing that makes a judge stop being neutral. I did not tell Daniel any of this in advance. He found out the way he had made everyone else find out things. By surprise, when he was served with divorce papers at his downtown apartment. I heard later, from Vanessa, that the process server handed him the envelope in the same lobby where I had read those 3 names off the mailbox. The confrontation, when it finally came, was over the phone. He called me screaming, and then, within the same conversation, switched to crying, and then, when neither worked, switched to the smooth voice, the reasonable voice. The voice that had steered me for 14 years. He said we could fix this. He said it was a mistake that had spiraled. He said Vanessa meant nothing, which was its own kind of cruelty. Because by then I knew Vanessa, and Vanessa was a person. And she was carrying his child, and she deserved better than to be called nothing. I let him talk. And when he was done, I said the only thing I had left to say. I said, "Daniel, you did not just cheat on me. You signed my name. And I have already handed that to the police and to my lawyer. So I am not the person you need to convince anymore." Then I hung up. And I did not pick up when he called back. That silence was the most powerful thing I have ever done. Now let me tell you about the consequences. Because I know that is what you came for. And because I think consequences matter more when they are real and not exaggerated. Daniel was not sent to prison for years. And I want to be honest about that instead of selling you a fantasy. Financial forgery between spouses is legally complicated, and prosecutors often treat it differently than fraud against a stranger. But the criminal report did its job, facing the possibility of felony charges. And with the documentation stacked against him, Daniel's leverage in the divorce collapsed completely. His own attorney told him to settle fast and settle quietly. I kept the house. The forged home equity debt was assigned entirely to Daniel in the settlement. Because the court accepted that I never authorized it. The $9,000 card was removed from my credit after the fraud investigation. Though it took 9 long months of letters and phone calls. Daniel was ordered to repay our children's college fund on a schedule the court set. He pays child support now, and he pays it on time. Because the alternative is a judge who already knows exactly what kind of man he is. His firm, when they learned the apartment had never been a company expense but a lie he told everyone. Let him go. The smooth talker talked himself out of a marriage, a home, and a career, all with the same mouth. And Vanessa. People always ask about Vanessa. She left him too. She read the police report. She saw the forged signature and understood that the man she thought was a wrong divorce was a person who would steal from his own children. She had her baby, a little girl, in the fall. Daniel is that child's father, and he has a relationship with her. And I have made my peace with that. Because that baby did nothing wrong. Vanessa and I are not close friends. That would be a strange ending, and I do not want to sell you something false. But we text sometimes. On the hardest days. In the beginning, she was the only other person on earth who understood the specific shape of what he had done. There is a strange kind of sisterhood in surviving the same lie. It has been almost 2 years now. I am still a pediatric nurse. I went back to full-time, and I am good at my job. And my children are okay. Ethan struggled for a while and saw a counselor. And that helped. Lily still climbs into my lap sometimes. And now I am the only one holding the whole house up. And it turns out I always was. I just did not know my own strength until I had to use all of it at once. I think about that lobby a lot. The 3 names on the mailbox. My own name sitting there in a life I never agreed to live. And here is what I have come to understand. And it is the reason I am telling you all of this. The affair was the smaller betrayal. The bigger betrayal was the one I could not see. The one hidden inside the paperwork I trusted him to handle. For 14 years I signed things I did not read. Because reading them felt like distrust, and I did not want to be a wife who did not trust her husband. But love and blindness are not the same thing. I confused handing over control with showing faith. And a person who wanted to could take that faith and forge it into a signature that curved the wrong way. So here is what I want you to take from my story. Whoever you are, wherever you are watching this from. Know your own money. Not because your partner is a liar. Most are not. But because your name belongs to you. And no amount of love is a reason to stop knowing what is being done in it. Pull your credit report once a year. Read the first page and the last page. Ask the boring question about the $1,100 leaving the account. And if the answer comes too smooth and too fast, ask it again. Your instincts notice the sofa. The face-down phone, the single letter V. Long before your mind let you understand. Trust the part of you that notices. I am not bitter. I am awake. And being awake, it turns out, is a better place to live than being comfortable and asleep. So let me leave you with this. If you had walked into that lobby and seen your own name on a mailbox for a home you never knew you had, next to a stranger you had never met, what would you have done first? Would you have stayed calm like I did? Or would you have finally stopped being the calm one? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Because these days, I pay attention to everything.